Hi everyone, it's Juliette and welcome to the first video in my Beginner's Corner series. So the piece that I've chosen to teach you today is called the Harebell by William Smallwood. I've put two links in the description box. One of them is a link to a free online version of the score that you can look at just to follow along with what I'm doing. And the other link is a link to a book containing loads of different beginner pieces that contains this piece. So you can go and buy that if you want to have a physical copy of the book. Make sure you stay to the end of the video because I will be playing through the whole piece so that you can see how it sounds like and how I do some of the things that I'm going to be telling you in the video. So without further ado, let's get into the video! Woo! So starting with the beginning of the piece, I think one of the most difficult parts is actually this continuous left hand of broken arpeggios that goes through the whole piece actually, and I'm going to try and show you the best way to do this so that you can make the best possible sound. So obviously what you don't want to do with these broken arpeggios is you don't want to play them robotically so that it sounds like that. You know, it has to be an accompaniment under the right hand melody that doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. So the most simple technique to make it sound nice and make it sound flowing, as it really should in this piece, all comes down to wrist movement really, and the wrist plays a huge part in making a nice sound out of almost anything on the piano, but we're going to use it, especially in this case, to make a nice continuous flowing sound. It's really important that this left hand doesn't stick out because the melody in the right hand is the most important part of the piece. Obviously you've got this going on over the top and you don't want that to kind of spoil the mood. So the way that you're going to achieve this flowing effect is quite simple really. You just think of it as coming from the wrist, not the fingers. And you want to make this circular movement starting from the bottom note, the bottom F, and circling up to the C and then back round again, down like that, so that you're always leading with the first note, you're always leading with the bottom F here and creating a circular movement. Now that might not come easily at first, but if you keep doing that, just take it slowly at first and then gradually you can build up the speed. If you make sure that you can do it really well slowly first, then it will start coming second nature to you when you ramp up the speed a bit. So I've just taken the camera over here to the piano for a sec so that you can see exactly what my wrist is doing. So you see I'm literally just doing a circular movement here. It's quite simple. The key to this though is to keep your wrist free and loose so that you can achieve this circular effect. The other thing that makes this left hand so difficult is that it's really hard to keep it even and to keep the notes equally spaced. What I mean by that is that you don't want it to sound like, you know, that's really exaggerated, but it is really easy to not make it sound perfectly do like that, but you want to keep it in time because otherwise it sounds mismatched and a bit disjointed, and it's just, even subconsciously, it's kind of unsettling. So I have two tricks to help combat that problem. The first thing sounds kind of counterintuitive, but something that really helps is to actually play it in a dotted rhythm like that. Sure exactly why that helps, but it just does, and it just, when you go back to doing it normally, it does really help good tip for trying to keep it even is to play each note twice in quick succession, so what I call double notes, so like this. And what that does is it really helps you focus on keeping it in time and keeping each note falling in its place, because it's really obvious if something falls out of its place. So if you just work on those 2 tips slowly, you don't have to take it at the full speed. If you work on those 2 tips slowly, and then when you go back to playing it as it should be, hopefully it should automatically be a bit more even. So now we've ironed out the left hand a bit, let's move on to the right hand melody. Now the key about this is that you want to keep the whole piece feeling like it's moving forward. You want to feel like there's some momentum that's driving the piece from the beginning to the end. And the simplest way to do this is to integrate dynamics, and you want to integrate climaxes and minimums in each of your phrases. So to give an example, in this first line you have 4 bars, and in those first 4 bars you have 1 phrase in the right hand which sounds like this. So that's 1 phrase, right? And you want to make it sound interesting. You're starting, it says on my score, to start piano, so soft. And when you go up to the middle, when you go up to this high A, you want to increase the dynamic, so you want to get a bit louder, and then when you come away from that A, you want to get softer. So I'll show you what I mean. So doing that in the phrases is a really key element to help the progression in the piece and to keep it sounding interesting. So in addition to that type of phrase, you also have another type of phrase which starts soft and ends louder, so you have a crescendo going through the whole phrase, which then leads on to the next phrase. So instead of the first phrase where we had it going up and then down, our next phrase actually ends on an up, so that it can lead into that again. That ebb and flow of dynamics is really crucial in keeping the movement and the sense of progression in the piece. So to show you that whole first section put together, to show you what I mean about this up and down of dynamics, we're going to have it sounding a bit like this. Notice the second time that I played that beginning melody, I actually played it louder than the first as well. So doing that kind of thing is also a good idea in mixing things up, just to keep both yourself and the audience interested, because you don't want to be playing the same thing and it sounding the same all over again. You want to make it sound like a new theme has entered. So just increasing the dynamic level a bit the second time helps to keep it interesting. Moving on to the next section of the piece, you've got these couple of phrases that build off of each other. And what I mean by that is that you've got this first phrase which goes like this. So you see, it sounds like it's going somewhere, it sounds like it's going to here, but then it comes away again. And then the next phrase goes like this. So instead of coming away at the end, it's finally found where it was trying to go, if that makes any sense at all. So you've repeated this first bit where it goes, in both of those phrases, it's leading up to here, but in the first phrase, you've come away. It's kind of like saying, yes, I can do it, yes, I can do it, oh no, I can't. And then in the second phrase, we've got, yes, I can do it, yes, I've made it, okay? So that's really important as well, to have to be aware that you have phrases building off of each other, and that sometimes you get repetition between phrases, and you have to really distinguish which one has made it to the top of the phrase and which one hasn't made it to the top of the phrase. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all. So now this next section is a part that I absolutely adore, and I adore it for a number of reasons actually. The first reason is because it develops on that idea of each phrase building up on itself. So what we've actually got here is we've got 4 phrases that are each getting louder, and throughout the whole 4 phrases we're building up to a climax at the end. So that's the first crucial thing. And the second reason why I like this bit so much is because we've actually got this helpful little bit in the left hand to help us really build up this section of the piece and really reach the full potential of the climax at the end. So I'll show you what I mean. So if we just take the left hand on its own for a sec in this next part, what we've got is this. And that doesn't sound like much by itself, but if I just play you the first note of each bar, just the left hand alone, and if I phrase those notes as well, then you're going to hear something like this. See, now that's really beautiful, and that is really going to help us, it's going to help the right hand build up to the end, because what we've essentially got here is we've got 2 melodies that are alternating with each other. So in the right hand we've got, and in the left hand we've got, and it's just going to help keep this continuous flow between the 2 hands so that we don't lose the momentum when the right hand ebbs down a little bit. So if I put this whole middle section together so you can see how the build-up really works. So you don't even really hear that bit of left hand that much, but somehow subconsciously it registers in your head and it registers in the listener's head that you've got this continuous sense of movement, because if you have a bass that's continually going and continually sounds like it's progressing, it just really helps it move on a lot more. So putting all of this middle section together with the climax going right through to the end, it's going to sound a bit like this. Climax, I'm in a perfect position to go on to this again, and it sounds refreshing now that you come back to this theme, because you haven't shied away from the end of the last phrase. You've really built it all up and you've said, okay, here is my climax, here is my biggest point of the piece, and now I'm going back to the familiar, refreshing opening that you know and you're familiar with. So now what we have from here to the end of the piece is we have a repetition of the beginning of the piece. So everything that I've said for the beginning part still holds for the end part. The only thing really left to say is that, as I think I mentioned already at the beginning, whenever you have a repetition of something in a piece, you don't want it to sound the same, because that's just boring, like the audience has already heard that before. So you don't have to come up with a drastic difference. The simplest thing to do is just to change the dynamics a little bit, and that even that doesn't have to be a drastic change. It can just be lifting up the dynamic levels a bit. So one way that I can achieve that is I can make the second time that the theme comes at the end a little bit louder than when I played it at the beginning. So for example, if my piano at the beginning was as soft as this, then I can make my piano at the end a little bit louder, so it's more like this. So it's really a subtle change, but even if only subconsciously, you do pick up on it and it does register as a change, so it doesn't sound the same and you almost feel like you're hearing something new. And that's what we want to go for. We always want to keep our listener and our audience interested. So the final thing that I want to talk to you about is that if you're going to introduce a change between the beginning and the end where one is softer than the other, then the left hand is already really difficult, but it's even more difficult to play it really soft, and it's even more difficult to play it really soft and actually be able to hear all the notes. I'm not just saying it, I find that difficult as well. I find that difficult in any piece where I have to play something really soft. And there is a pretty simple tip or hack, I guess if you want to say it like that, to really help bring down the dynamics. And it can be a little difficult at first, but if you keep practicing it and you keep at it, then it really works wonders. So what you're going to do is you're going to play, so let's just take it for the opening for the sake of this. You're going to play it, but you're not going to play it. So what I want you to do is I want you to mime it on the keys. So instead of pressing all the way down on the keys, you're just going to lightly graze the tops, like that. Yeah, and that's literally all you have to do. So if you just do that miming thing for a little bit, then you should find it's a lot easier to play softer. So now hopefully you've learned loads of different things, and I'm going to play the whole thing to you so you see how everything fits together. So I really hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe and turn my notifications on so that you don't miss any other of these videos. And have a lovely day. Bye!